talking about the evolution as a crew chief, laying in the dirt, changing gears, and a championship crew chief 3 years later. I'm fascinated by when you think about. I've been able to watch Chad Knaus sort of have a similar experience. A lot of crew chiefs do this, right? You look at these guys and you think about where they came from. How do you evolve from journeyman, working his tail off modified guy, going, you go through IROC, working with Kawicki for a little while, very short period of time, then Dave Marcus and different things, right? Doing all sorts of stuff. How does that guy turn into somebody who is so prominent, iconic, well-respected in like, take yourself back to your peak in the Cup garage as a crew chief for Jeff Gordon. You're orchestrating this team into a championship team. You're in control of Jeff Gordon, who's an incredible talent. And from the exterior, you look like a guy who is who knows exactly how he prepared, exactly what his next step is, exactly ready for anything that's coming at him. You carried yourself with such confidence, right? But you weren't that person 3 years ago. How did that happen? How does that happen for anybody? I see this all the time where it's almost impossible to really scout that position. You can't see. No one was able to really look at you in the dirt at Flemington and see that leadership quality or that potential to be that guy you became. How does that happen?
I always tell everybody, look, I'm kind of the Forrest Gump of motorsports, right? Where sometimes you just end up in the right place at the right time, and you're challenged with something that you didn't even know you could do. And they always say that you don't really know what you can do until you have to do it. But I was very, very fortunate throughout my career to be around some fantastic people, and I mean some good local racers in New Jersey, like Gil Hearn and people like that. That had a lot of wisdom, but they were there. Richie Evans and raced with a lot of those guys and watched them. And then my years at Roger Penske. Penske, you're when you grow up in the Penske culture, you're learning stuff you don't even know that you're learning it, right? And then through Jay Signori and IROC and all that had prepared me, and I went to try and go back racing, and I get hurt, and I got to get a job, and I didn't even want to be the crew chief. We had fun at Bill Davis's. I did not want to be the crew chief. I told Rick Hendrick the first day, and Rick will tell you this.
What did you want?
I wanted to be the chassis guy. I want to build cars and set the cars up. I told them they need to go hire Andy Petrie to be a crew chief, and Rick says, no, we're going to hire you to be the crew chief. Jeff wants you to be the crew chief. I said, I don't know how to be a crew chief. I've never been a crew chief. Hire Andy Petrie. And he said, no, you're going to be the crew chief. I said, I don't want to be the crew chief. He said, well, that's the only job we got. Take it or leave it.
No shit.
Yeah, I was not. But that you ask about that, and it's because Rick saw way more in me than I saw in myself.
Yeah.
Like he said, look.
When you go to the first race, right, or the test or whatever, right, and you're in that position, I mean, you've been in this job for a few months now, but are you, from the outside looking in, you seem to be, you fit the mold, you fit the template, the crew chief template, but inside, are you
scared to death? My finger used to shake like that when I went to push the radio button. I was like, ugh. I was scared to death. But as a leader, you've got to exude confidence.
Right.
If you don't exude confidence, the team's not confident, the driver's not confident.
How did you figure that out?
I read a lot of coaching books, Vince Lombardi, and I honestly read Gibbs, but I would watch films, and then we would record, like I would listen to what other crew chiefs said and watch how people did, and we studied and studied.
Who did you pull from?
From crew chief side of things? Jeff Hammond, because Jeff Hammond was one of the best guys that you could talked to on the radio. Jimmy Fennig helped me a lot. Robin Pemberton, Tony Glover, Andy Petrie, all those guys got behind me and taught me a lot. And we used to scan and, of course, everybody's radios. And I would have a deal hooked on my radio where I could record what they were saying. Hey, Andy and I had our own channel between the two of us when he was crew chief for your dad.
And y'all would talk amongst each other?
We'd talk amongst ourselves. Yep.
Bull.
Yeah, that's the truth. Yeah,
How long did that happen?
It went on for 2 years, and then Andy, went and got his own team, and I think we did it for one more year when he had Schrader. But
no kidding.
100%. Yes, Andy. We had the 3 and the 24 were almost our own little teammates.
No one's going to believe that.
That's true. That's 100% true.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. I'd talk to Andy on the box about pitting, and he'd talk to me about this and that. There was a time in Charlotte, 1994, October at Charlotte, I built the shocks for the 3-car.
Bullshit.
That's true. 100. I was a crew chief on the 24 and built a set of shocks for the 3-car.
Unreal. And then obviously y'all, I think that's Jeff's rookie year, right?
No, 93 was our
93
rookie
was
year. But 94 we weren't going to win the championship. And I think your dad was in the battle with Mark or somebody, and we were like, okay, well, here.
No kidding. Unbelievable. So that's a great thing to segue to, because I know by talking to you, you really had a great opinion of my dad, and y'all had a very, very cool level of respect, and you asked for a uniform to drive your race your modified a little bit, and he gives you this IROC uniform, and you've given me that uniform here recently, and I'm very thankful. There was a moment though, shortly after you built those shocks, that Jeff does become a championship contender. How do you shut off that, or how do you balance sort of that relationship and respect and you know this guy, right? You appreciate Dad, you like him, and y'all are friendly, but then once Jeff becomes a winner, the competitiveness and maybe even the friendliness kind of gets a little chilly at times. How did you balance that?
It wasn't that easy emotionally, but professionally, we always got along. We didn't try and do each other, dirty. Andy and I got along, and a ton of respect for Richard Childress and that organization. Jeff and your daddy, they'd run another quite a bit on the racetrack, even in practice and stuff, but that was up to them, But with me, it was difficult because, again, it happened so fast. Like, here was a guy who was my hero, on IROC and all that stuff. And he'd watch me run my modified at Wilkesboro and things like that. And then, man, you got to race this guy. But you also know that if you're going to be great, you got to go through this, because there was no way to win that championship other than going through a 3-car.
Yeah.
Simple as that. And it was difficult for me sometimes to be as big a fan I was of your dad's and focus on my job. But I also knew that I had a responsibility to Rick Hendrick, to Jeff Gordon, and your dad in some way would respect me more if we could go toe to toe with him. Right. Like if I could get his respect that way, he probably didn't like it on the days that we beat him, but I know that he respected my ability with the car, and through all that stuff, we only had one little run in. He threatened to whip my ass one time after Bristol, and we had a good talk up in the holler there.
What happened?
Pretty good. Jeff and him had tangled at Bristol, and I was mad, just being a fool, just stupid, and I run up in the 3-car truck, and he was gone already, and yelled at his crew chief, and they told him about it. So the next week, I think we were Darlington, but you know how 1 and 2 used to park in the garage next to one another.
Yeah,
so he comes walking out there, and he used to, how he'd get in our car, he'd walk up to the side where everybody else kind of climb in the window. He just throw his leg over the thing. He just throws one leg over and get in the thing, sit on the door, and he looks at the door, and he says to me, I want to see you after practice. And I thought to myself, right? So after practice, I went back up in the truck and whatever, and Richard Childress pops his head out of the back of the 3 truck, and he says, Dale wants to see you. And I was like, shit. Now I'm thinking to myself, man, I know what this is about, right? So I walk in there, and I had 2 shocks in my hand. And he walks in, he goes, You hit me with them shocks? And I said, I will if I have to. And he said, and he gives me a good talking to about, you don't ever run in my truck yelling at my people. You come and see me. And I said to him, and I thought, okay, this is a big turning point for me. Because if I just, yes, sir, and I sit down like a whooped dog, he's not ever going to respect me.
Yeah.
And I said, yes, sir. But I said, I did come to see you. You weren't there. Shouldn't have yelled at them people. I said, but if you got a problem with Jeff, take it out with Jeff. Don't run into my car on the racetrack because my guys have got to fix that thing. And, you know, what happened at Bristol just didn't need to happen. Don't remember the exact words. And he looked at me and said, all right, sit down. You know, we sat down and talked about, that's when he was looking at hiring Steve Park and stuff like that. But that day, you know, again, you think about, you're sitting there, I was ready to throw up, right? I was ready to throw up. But I thought to myself, if I don't stand up and answer him like a man, he's never going to respect me.